She's in the tent or whatever, and one of the angels like, so Abraham's like, yeah. He's all, God is, God's thinking maybe it's time to follow through on that plan. He was like testing your patience. Abraham's like, oh, right, patience. Definitely got a whole lot of patience over here. Yeah, I was waiting for the word of God, and thank God you have come, and now I will have a child. And Ishmael's like, wah! And he's like, shh. So then they're like, okay, well, your wife Sarah will have a baby. And he's like, my wife Sarah is like 90 years old, and her vagina looks like this. I really don't think that she's going to be having a baby anytime soon, even though my dong is still like this big. And so the angels are all, do not doubt the will of God. Okay. And they get up and they pack their yogurt and they're like, peace out. And they leave. And Sarah, when she heard them in the tent, was like, ha, no fucking way. I'm 90 and my vagina's like this. There's no chance in hell I'm going to have a baby. The angels were like, who left? And he was like, I didn't even know what you're talking about. And Sarah's like, and they're like, you shall name the baby Isaac because it means she left. So the baby is going to be named Isaac when he comes. And so they're like, don't doubt God, BTW. And so they leave and they take their yogurt with them. And so Abraham's like, okay, let's do this. And so they go and they're like, Nookie, and they have Nookie too. And then, lo and behold, Isaac, she's preggers. And once Sarah gets pregnant, she starts being like a colossal bitch to Hagar and little Ishmael. She'll like cuff him around or whatever and like make Hagar do stupid work or whatever. And Abraham's like, dude, that's not cool. And Sarah's like, I am pregnant! He's like, okay. And so then, everything's going along fine. And then Sarah's like, I want her out of here. I want this bitch to leave. And Abraham's like, well, kind of in the middle of the desert. You want to like wait till like at a truck stop or something? We can like drop her there. And he's like, no, now. So she's like, okay. So he gives him a sack of water, like a goat skin thing. He's like, here, Hagar. She's like, what's this? He's like, well, it's been a little change of living arrangements. Let's talk about this. So he takes Hagar, takes little Ishmael, who's like, 7. And he's like, bye guys. Pushes them out into the desert. And she's like, and Ishmael's like, don't we get any yogurt? And he's like, no. And so they're like, okay. And so they wander off into the desert or whatever. And, they're in the desert and they're kind of dying because they ran out of water. So they're in the desert, they're like, they're like crawling through the desert. And she's like, well, shit, my kid's gonna die. I really don't want to watch him die. So you stay here, Ishmael. I'm just gonna go, okay? See ya. And so she leaves, and Ishmael's like, Mom! But she doesn't come back. And so they're sitting there, and then suddenly the angel's like, oh, Hagar. And she's like, hey, you're not an angel. He's like, why am I not an angel? She's like, well, you're not wearing shorty shorts. He's like, God, it was them, wasn't it? He's like, yeah. He's like, oh, I have such a long conversation with them when they get home. Anyway. You cannot let Ishmael die because he's just a sad little kid and God would be so effing displeased. So, here's some water and there's a city right there. And you can just pick him up and you're going to go and Ishmael will be the father of a great nation. She's like, really? He's like, yeah, I think so. It's hearsay. And she's like, okay. So, they grab the water and they walk off toward the city and neither of them are heard from again by Abraham or, his family. But, legend has it that Ishmael's family, Ishmael's children, became the race of Arab people, and Isaac's children became the Jews. Ergo, they fight a lot. Anyway, back to Abraham. So, Sarah's all preggers with Isaac or whatever, and then one day, Isaac comes out. And Abraham's like, oh my gosh, miracle! And they're like, yes, and they name him Isaac because the angel told them to. And then 12 years later, God decides, Abraham and Isaac look like they have a pretty good father-son relationship. They play catch, go out there, hunt, do whatever. So let's test this. So he's like, Abraham, what's going on? And Abraham's like, hey God, look, you're not still sore about the whole Hagar thing. God's like, water under the bridge, dude, water under the bridge. He's like, okay, good. Because it was really cool, and God's like, I don't need to hear the details. Okay. And so he's also, that kid Isaac? He's like, Isaac? My son. Yeah, no, your other son. What other son? No, I meant Isaac, dude, okay. And he's all, well, can you pack some wood and get some wine and go up to a mountain and kill him? What? Yeah, I think it would be really cool to bring back human sacrifice. I mean, no one ever gave me one, so I'm figuring, all the other gods are doing it, so, let's try this out. Abraham's like, you've got to be kidding me. He's like, no, seriously, I'm so seriously right now. And he's like, okay. And so he's like, whatever you want, God. And God's like, oh, so cool. And God disappears. Then Abraham's like, hey, Isaac, so you want to go to a camping trip with your old man? Isaac's like, yay! And so they pack up all this shit on a mule. And like there's like 2 servants or whatever, because you know you can't lead a mule without servants. So they're walking, and they end up at this mountain. I think it's Mount Carmel, maybe, I don't know. They end up at Mount Carmel or whatever, and they climb up to the top, and Abraham's like, servants wait here, and they're like, okay, you don't need to help the sacrifice. No, it's the thing. So they waited with the mule. And Abraham's walking up with like the wood or whatever, and Isaac's like, Dad, what are you gonna use for a sacrifice? I didn't see any goats, I didn't see any sheep. Dad, what are you gonna use to sacrifice? And Abraham's like, this is not gonna be as difficult as I thought it was gonna be. And so they're walking up or whatever, and Abraham's like, so Isaac, sit here on the altar, and you just wait there for a minute, okay? Isaac's like, okay. And so they're sitting there or whatever. And then he's all, and Abraham considered for a minute, like, pretending to light up, like, a cigarette and accidentally dropping a match or something. We figured that wouldn't be very appropriate, and Isaac might jump off. He was, like, a spry little kid. So he's like, so Isaac, I mean, this is God. It's totally not me, because I really like you, and I'd love to keep you around. But, I mean, God says, and he kind of went over my head, so, yeah, I'm gonna kill you. And Isaac's like, okay. He's like, really? He's like, yeah, no worries, it's cool. And so he's like, oh, all right then. So he ties him up or whatever, and he's like, he's gonna throw a knife into him. Then an angel, it shows up. He's like, oh my gosh, no! And he shoves him apart, and he's like, JK. God was seriously just saying, JK. He was like totally testing you, pass the test, and Abraham's like, me. And I was like, stab me. He's like, no, seriously, you guys need to chill out, like right now. Like just deep breaths. Have you guys, wouldn't happen to see any angels with cut off shorts from by here, did you? No? Okay. I'll just get myself out. And so he leaves, and suddenly there's a rustling in the bushes, and they look over, OMFG, ram! And it's a ram that's like caught in a bush, it's all blah, blah! And so Isaac's like, oh my gosh, Dad, look! And then Abraham's like, God has provided the sacrifice. That's quotable, isn't it? And so then they pick up the ram, and they go, and they kill it, they set it on fire, and it's sacrificed to God, wah! And God's like, that's pretty good. And, little known fact, legend has it that the place where he was going to sacrifice Isaac is where Christ was eventually crucified, thus bringing everything full circle. And Abraham did a lot of other shit, but it involved having a son named Isaac, who did a lot of crazy shit too. So, yeah, that's where Abraham's story kind of ends, because Isaac grows up and he becomes like the main character. It's like The Godfather. Like, he becomes like Michael Corleone and like grows up and does other shit. So yeah, that's the story of Abraham.